IVM.
$100. That's all it takes to begin your journey with Bitcoin and Ethereum. No, really. With CoinSwitch, you can start investing in over 100 cryptocurrencies with just 100 rupees. On top of that, there are zero charges for deposits and withdrawals, so you can trade, buy, sell, however and whenever you want. All of this, plus their extremely intuitive interface, makes CoinSwitch the perfect app for beginners in the crypto space. But don't take my word for it. Just download CoinSwitch for free and try it out for yourself. If you'd like more information on cryptocurrencies, tune into a show about crypto with me, Rohan Joshi, my new adventure on IVM Podcasts. CoinSwitch, kuch to badlega.
Hello and welcome to Simplified, a podcast where we try to break down complex things around the world using a smattering of humor, a bare minimum Wikipedia research, and a whole lot of winging it. Yes,
I thought it was whole lot of conditions apply, but
no conditions apply. We are that way. We are like a bookstore that sells only Tintin. We are without asterisks. Yes. Nice, no?
Oh my God.
The look on Sriket's face is like, did he actually come up with that? It's like half indignant and half admiration, which is a very rare place to go to. Anyway.
This is already a special episode considering all four of us are here.
Yeah,
We might take this opportunity to actually introduce ourselves, considering our producers have been like really haranguing us about it.
Yes. The context being that we have been told that we do not introduce Simplified or us and we jump right into the show. Yeah. And the reason that he gave us was the new listeners will not know what the show is about. We will leave it over there so that the old listeners can laugh at it.
We basically approach Simplified like one large episode. Okay, like there is like
This is still episode 1. This is still episode 1.
This is like Amazon.
Yeah,
it's always day 1.
It's always day 1. No, we used to do this thing. So long time listeners will know that our infamous episode number 150 ended up having 5 parts or something. This is like that. Yeah. This is just episode 1. Yeah. It is just part
coming back to the fact that we still have to introduce ourselves. Hi. Hi, new listeners. Welcome. For the life of me, don't understand how you're still around. But if you are, I am Sriket, one of the hosts of Simplified. Who's next?
Yeah. Sriket is our official fact checker and poster boy. I am
the resident geriatric. My name is Narendra Shenoy. I was born roughly at the time of the Sepoy Mutiny or the First War of India.
I was thinking Pangea split.
Yeah, Mangal Pandey was a good friend of mine.
And,
I am an engineer by training and profession.
No. We don't need to go that much detail.
Yeah. It's not episode 300 right now.
We'll link to our full resumes. Two notes. No, we won't. Hi, I'm Tony, by the way, and last host to join Simplified quite a while back. Actually.
And currently enjoying his 15 minutes of fame. Because of
elaborate. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yes. So Tony was recently television famous because you can find Tony in the highlights package after the 10th wicket of
So he went to watch the cricket match at 1KD and he came on TV.
Yeah.
And so he's internationally famous. Millions of people all over the world saw him, and obviously everyone knows who he is.
Everyone knows him to be the guy who actually figured out where the camera is.
Yes. You genuinely missed a chance to plug Simplified over this. This is like writing a viral thread and not having a follow-up. Check out my SoundCloud.
Yeah, this is actually a good lead into the creator economy and why we'll probably never be a part of it.
But before that,
only creators know economies.
Yeah, we have a fourth host who is still to introduce himself. Yeah. Please introduce us. Oh boy,
J.R.D. Tata of Simplified.
Oh, me no,
Jamshedji Tata, whatever.
Yeah. So I am Chuck, and Naren and I started Simplified long back with nothing but an idea and a fan switch, which we switched off. From those humble origins,
today we have 4 fans.
We have a media empire which spans close to 250 episodes. or 250 parts of the first episode, as we were saying. So anyway, let's get into this. We really need to work on a better intro, guys.
Yeah,
sure. So today I thought we could talk about the creator economy. It's a term that is doing the rounds right now a lot. And I just thought, as for accomplished creators and consumers, we could talk about it. So the creator economy, there's no definition or anything for it, but it is this overarching phrase that tends to combine everything from podcasting to individuals who are starting newsletters of their own, to content creators on Instagram and starting their own YouTube channels, and pretty much many other spaces as well. So yeah, we just thought we'd have a random chat about that.
I think 50 million people are part of the creator economy right now.
It's absolutely fascinating, Tony, that we have both read the exact same article. I have the stats over here somewhere. 50 million.
The first Google
search. Here's the question: What do you think really sort of gave the fillip to this economy? It started even before COVID started. So COVID only,
I think like all good things on the internet, the origin is probably pornography related.
So here's the thing. I think people have been creating content on the internet for a long time before the term creator economy became a thing.
It's monetizing also, right? So we used to write blogs and get approximately 0 rupees and 0 paisa for it.
Yeah, and I can assure you a large part of the creator economy still works that way. But I think the difference is this, Naren. I think right now there's so much institutional interest in it that platforms can now monetize creators and help creators monetize other people who. So I think it's a matter of timing. It's a matter of VC money coming in. It's a matter of publications writing about the so-called creator economy. Yeah. The creator economy was always a thing. It's just that it's got a fancy new name right now.
What I've seen is, my favorite example of this is TikTok, right? So when TikTok came, it really so YouTube was well and truly there before TikTok.
Yeah.
But TikTok went from person to person in a way that YouTube couldn't.
Yeah. So let's take a step back and try to understand the evolution probably, right? So let's go back to the original social contract of the internet, which is basically that there is free content which you can consume, in lieu of which you have to put up with ads, basically, right? And that's ad revenue has been the model by and large for everyone, right? Yeah. Then came the era of social media where people could become brands in themselves by way of the content they created. And when Facebook and Twitter and all originally came in, anybody could become a sort of well-known enough figure / influencer because the platform enabled that much organic reach based on how good the content was. Then all of the brands obviously jumped in on the bandwagon and things went to shit because, again, they used to wanted to plug their brands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so the next wave of the evolution obviously was that these creators suddenly had a vacuum, which is that now there was an established way in which you could actually scale your audience by just creating quality content. How do I monetize it became the question, right? Because, and we had moved beyond the age of influencers in some sense where you tweet for cash or something like that, right? So, and then on jumped all of these platforms, which existed in some shape or form, but like with the, coming to being of Patreon or Substack or some of these models is probably where we are.
So with the creator economy, I think everyone more or less knows what the creator part of it is. I think what's matured really is the economy part of it, right? Yeah. So we can joke that a large part of the creator economy doesn't make money, and I think that's more or less true. But I think where things have changed, case in point, But also that's also because of the way we treat this, right? For us, this is an excuse to hang out with our best friends rather than capitalist means. No, just me. Yeah. Okay, cool. I was just checking. We bring this up at the next board meeting.
I'm still waiting for my check.
You
good scam.
Tony, I told you not to tell it. Okay, so the point being, so right now, you make a good point, Tony. It's not just about advertising, but it's also about patronage to some extent, right? This is amazing theory that Kevin Kelly had a long time back. I'm sure all of you have heard of it. It's 1,000 True Fans. The point that he made was that in order to make a livelihood on the internet, and he wrote this in 2008, fairly prescient, that all you need is 1,000 people every year paying you $100 each. And he calculated, of course, with US incomes and all that in mind. And that's pretty much all you need. And that's not a lot to ask for, 1,000 people. And then he even drew a context. He gave very, very exotic random scenarios. Suppose you are like this, and even if you have an interest that is 1 in a million, that is 7,000 people around the world, which is way more than the 1,000 people every year that you need to sustain your business. And mild deviation here to Abhishek Madan's greatest ever tweet: if you are 1 in a million, congratulations, there are 15 of you in Bangalore itself. And now that theory has been updated by this other writer on the creator economy called Legion. Tony, I'm pretty sure you must have come across those articles if you have been reading about this. So there's a theory now that 1,000 True Fans has now become 100 True Fans because of all these platforms like Patreon, etc. What you need is 100 super fans who will pay you $1,000 a year. And obviously, the incentives that somebody has to pay somebody $1,000 a year are very different from following for $100 a year. This is actually quite beautiful. If you're supporting somebody for $100 a year, you're showing patronage and you're showing support and you're showing fandom. But the moment it becomes $1,000 a year, that person wants something. It's no longer about signaling. It's now I want to learn something from you so that I can become better. And I thought that leap was fascinating. And the point that Legion makes is that every creator can potentially get there. It might be just like say a customized workshop for those 100 people every year, offering private customized support, some exclusive content, or whatever the case may be. So it's kind of fascinating, right? So that patronage is one way of monetizing. Advertising, of course, was always there from before. That never changes. All the typical influencer marketing, things like brand activations and all that. But it's very fascinating that now creators can go beyond just this. They can even do courses and things like that. I'll just wrap this up with one example like this. One of the creators that I came across last year, and it's hilarious, and on paper, it sounds like it shouldn't work. It's somebody called Kat Norton. Kat Norton she goes on Instagram by the handle Miss Excel, MISSEXCEL, our own beloved Microsoft Excel. Her content is basically, and again, this sounds like it shouldn't make sense, she teaches Excel hacks while dancing to EDM. No part of this makes sense. It should not make sense. So she recently made 6 figures in one day in US dollars.
Wow.
Right? How does she do that? It's not by becoming, say, 1 million followers on Instagram and doing brand deals. Yes, that is there. But because of this acts as marketing for her in some sense, that and she sells her own course on Excel, which I am assuming she doesn't exactly dance around with. So in some sense, her content is actually acting as marketing for what her actual thing is, and she makes money through that. So that's a point. I think that's one example of how this 100 True Fans is elaborated on quite nicely. And in this day and age of NFTs and all that, leaving the skeptical part of it aside, where you have all you need is even one super fan who is willing to pay you $1 million or $100,000 for that one painting or the first episode of Simplified or whatever it is we would like to NFT, and there you go, you're set. So
good thing about the Legion article that you didn't mention is that Legion actually is short for lead generation. Okay, sorry.
or his whole fan base should be basically VR Legion. So that way also. But on that Excel EDM lady,
Legion is a she, by the way. Sorry.
I'm talking about the Excel EDM lady. Her approach to things is something. I mean, what people are doing is now effectively it's the creation of personal brands, and absolutely like explosion of personal brands in that way, where you have someone like, I mean, what she was doing reminds me of one of our favorite examples of content marketing, which is Will It Blend. Blend Tech doing Will It Blend. So the Will It Blend was like this random series. So Blend Tech is a
Nixie company
that makes blenders. What they did was they just had this entire series of people throwing random things, a content series of people throwing random things into the blenders and asking whether it will blend or not.
And these random things, Naren, includes iPhones, car components, and things like that. And that's great marketing, right? Like if we can destroy an iPhone, I can probably make a smoothie for you.
It's like, Naren, basically engineers work for years together to come up with non-destructive testing.
Yeah.
And in one fell swoop, these guys have monetized.
So it should, like when a hard force meets a when an irresistible force meets an immovable object like that, it should be when a non-destructible screw meets a Blendtec.
So if you have a textbook on non-destructive testing, can you blend it? So
it's like Chuck doing content marketing on Simplified for Toot.
Which has been done. I believe this has been done at some point. I think we should we should all just refresh. We should take a break at this point of time, and we'll come back and continue our discussion on the creator economy and everything that it entails.
Have you ever wondered where the business world is headed? How the ways in which we create, market, and sell to consumers will evolve? Or if we'll ever go back to wearing pants while working? For answers to all of this and more, tune into Advertising is Dead with me, Varun Duggirala. Every Tuesday, as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers from across business, media, marketing, and beyond. You can catch all episodes of Advertising is Dead on the IBM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from.
Welcome back. We are now going to talk about the creator economy and everything that it entails. We enjoyed that. Let's get back. Do we have to do this every time? We are new to this.
One interesting aspect, right? Like why this became important and like came of age, I guess, is that when we started blogging we didn't YouTube, obviously, thank God. Mm-hmm. But whenever those things started, there was a way to monetize that as well directly within the platform, right? Mm-hmm. Or like Spotify gives you X amount of money per stream played on the platform, right? Mm-hmm.
But I don't know about Spotify. So I recently saw an Onion headline saying that Spotify celebrates the first $100 given to
that's the point. Right?
It's very niggardly.
So when it started off, it seemed like a good idea that you give AdSense space on your blog or like streaming will give you money. But eventually it came to a point to say that these guys are obviously going to keep like 95, 99%. What is it? Mal pe jat?
Mal pe jakat.
Reference win.
That's all the creators were left with. And therefore, I think it reached a point of inflection to say now this thing takes over. A good way to do this is to look at the history of how the Bugle has existed, right? Initially, it was owned by a media empire, part of the Times, Rupert Murdoch. Yeah. So they paid them to create the content. Then they basically said something that guy didn't like, so they let them go. And obviously, they continued making the podcast with different models, advertising at one point. But now, currently, it's all
largely patronage. Yeah, I find it hilarious that the Bugle was born from the same family that birthed Fox News. I just find this absolutely fascinating. I didn't know that. I mean, it started from the Times Group, Rupert Murdoch. I mean, you can draw connect like that anywhere, right? But anyway.
Fox does have a whole bunch of content, a whole bunch of very excellent content, which we all love and has nothing to do with really
like The Simpsons, for example. Exactly. But let's come back to this. I think so. I just want to actually riff off something that Sriket had said before the break, which was getting into all kinds of niches. I think that's something that we're seeing right now. We are seeing people trying all different kinds of content formats, whatever it is. So, I was trying to rationalize this somewhere in my own head. And because I like trying to develop frameworks and things like that, it's almost like these guys are taking something that they're good at and multiplying that with something that they are interested in or curious about or something of that sort. Like you take Excel Lady, for instance. Now, if you start doing that, I know it seems slightly theoretical, but now you can do anything. You can say, okay, I'm good at speaking and I am interested in football. Boom, that's an idea right over there. And if you add a layer of treatment on top of that, okay, there could be a funny way, it could be in poetry format. And suddenly, if you think about it, you can get all sorts of ideas like this. Can I do football reviews in Shairi format? every day. Now, that's a legit content idea. And I think that's what's interesting. There are just so many opportunities, so many niches. And I think we live in an age right now which rewards weird. I think the more that Seth Godin's theory of the purple cow, right? More weird, the more it stands out. You will at least have people curious enough to see what's happening over here. Hopefully, some of those people will stick around. Some of those people will stick around. And some of those people will fund it because they like what they were doing and stuff like that. Tony and I can speak from personal experience with a certain content creation project, which we shall call CCP conveniently. Which, let us say, reached a niche audience who believed in what we were doing. And yeah, I mean, not that we quit our day jobs for it, but we were constantly surprised by the amount of money that people were actually willing to send our way for a random idea.
And yeah, and just building on that, Chuck. I mean, if you even take like Simplified itself, like one of the things. I mean, we started Simplified with the objective of like. The primary objective of Simplified is to simplify like current affairs topics for the people. And the layer that we added on is like the humor and the poor jokes that we add to it.
Yeah.
But
I thought it was the other way around.
Yeah. So no, but that's what actually most of our listeners, at least the feedback that we've received is that, I mean, they do listen in. I mean, it's not that the facts are irrelevant and the content that we talk about is not relevant as such, but most of the people who kind of write in and who kind of reach out to us is that it's because it feels like, yeah, there are four friends talking around like a coffee table over drinks or something like that. And that's what really attracts them to the podcast. So like you said, yes, it is about the freshness of the content, but it's also about how you're going to take a certain thing and break it out of its mold and kind of present it in a whole different way.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so it's no longer that you need to learn about the creator economy in a New York Times article. You can hear us do nonsense and listen about it.
Yeah, absolutely. But just one fact check over there. Naren and I started Simplified. You were the later co-founder that came in.
Wow.
Yeah, just wanted to.
How many ESOPs did you get?
Like I think this is about 180 episodes in. I have finally been made to realize my place here.
Yeah, I mean, see, Elon Musk was not the founder of Tesla. I mean, I'm just being factual. I mean, the value that you bring to this panel is unparalleled.
Yeah. First, you tell me there is no check. Now this.
The only ESOPs we get are ESOPs tables.
Speaking of facts, we used to have a professor who used to tell us that the difference between fact and opinion is that mother is a fact, father is an opinion.
Wow.
Not that it has any connection to anything else. But
that is incredible. But jokes apart, yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. There is so much niche. I mean, there are so many examples. I'm sure all of us know one example each, at least, of some content that, it's just so niche and just so weird, like which the internet enables and just makes sense. Like recently, Divya, my wife, and I have been tripping over this channel, which is basically a dog groomer, just doing hilarious commentary while grooming dogs and cats. It's strangely compelling and relaxing content. There's another one which we saw. I forget the name of this channel, but it's a Nepali graphic designer whose whole shtick is social commentary while designing fake book covers on Photoshop live at that time. It's crazy. It just absolutely works. And here's the thing. I think no matter which vertical you take, like say, Sriket, you and I are interested in prog music, for instance, right? You will find some strand of that somewhere on the internet, which is humor-based, some strand of that, which is serious opinion and all that. It's not like this couldn't have existed before. I'm sure in the 60s, 70s and all that, somebody must have thought, hey, wouldn't it be great to have a graphic novel based on this? But distribution was always the issue. And here is where that parallel with marketing happens, right? All these young D2C companies that started, I find a lot of parallels actually between the D2C economy and the creator economy. It's not like nobody thought of creating vegan products back in the 60s and 70s. It's just that how do you find the target audience for this? You'll have to advertise en masse, which is not possible. But this day and age, somebody can start a company, use your usual targeting parameters on Facebook and all that, and go exactly to that audience. It's fascinating. I think of the creator economy that way as well. Like if you have a niche genre or something, you will be able to find fans around the world for it.
Yeah.
So
I think slight distinction between niche and weird needs to be made.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
You
Yeah.
sort of combine the two, right? So weird will work.
You really
one
can't
time.
make a distinction. You cannot.
No. I'll tell
between
you what the distinction is. So weird, you will watch one time, right? So someone's in the shower and composing a song. Okay, it's interesting. I'll watch it one time. But if he does the same thing 50 times, I'm not going to watch it and pay.
But that's the thing, right, Tony? That's the thing. I think that really depends. Like the example Shriketh was giving before, the Blendtec example, all of it is exactly the same. You know exactly what's going to happen in every video. This guy, and by the way, it's not random people. It's Tom Dixon, the founder of the company himself, who does it every time. So you know what's going to happen. He's going to destroy an iPhone. He's going to destroy something. You know exactly what's going to happen, yet you want to see the whole thing. So I think it depends on the content. If it's the same song over and over again, I think, people might not. But I think there needs to be some novelty value that comes out of it, either in terms of format or the thing being destroyed.
So the thing is
whatever.
this. One question I have is, obviously when anyone sets off to do something like this, be a creator in a very niche manner, there is no way he or she would know whether it would eventually make them any money. They do it nevertheless, because there is literally no way of finding out whether it's going to. And there's famously one, Amit Verma told me about this. One guy who
Ali Abdal, he keeps giving this example. He
made 50 or 100 videos, and he had a few hundred followers. And it was only after video 50 or video 100 or whatever, his following started rising exponentially.
Yeah.
And now he has several 100,000 or a million.
Yeah. In fact, Naren, this is something that every single creator whose story that I have read or I have spoken to or whatever has told me, it's not like AIB was famous right off the bat. They did a lot of stuff, and then the millions started coming in, and then of course subsequently. And honestly, you can say this of any band as well. It's not like the Beatles were given the audience on a platter.
My point is, no one in their right mind would do this to earn money, because
100%.
Expected value is very, very low.
Absolutely.
I mean, we could do something and do it till kingdom come and no one would notice. It just wouldn't take off.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Amit is very fond of saying that if do something only if you either learn only if you enjoy it yourself or if you learn something from it yourself.
Correct.
Right? If you're starting off with the objective of making money, let's face it, there are several better ways of making money than creating content. Right?
Actually going out and working, right? So that's a much better way.
Or putting in an index fund.
I mean, again, just to go back to the original point, right? So some of these things you watch because it's weird and fascinating. Others you sort of follow because it's a habitual thing that you do, right? And I think just from pure psychology standpoint, if you're able to create a habit out of something or habit stack something, then that will stick for longer. I guess the association with podcasts for most people is, let's say, running or workouts or something. Or for instance, I don't know if you remember, obviously 10, 12 years ago, we used to solve crosswords every morning together, right? On one group. If we did this as a stream now, right? With one expert, one guy making the jokes, another guy trying to figure it out, and did it at 6 p.m. every day, right? In 2 months, we'd have enough to profit.
I think that's a great proposition. That's a great idea, by the way. I'd love to see you do that. I would tune in as audience. I think that's great popcorn content at 6 p.m.
Yeah. So another important sort of inflection that happened, I would think in India at least, is that media started losing credibility. And a lot of these explainer kind of guys came about.
Dhruv Rathi and all that.
Or
Fade D'Souza for that matter.
Any of these guys, right? So the point is, there were multiple factors which basically led to this thing to say that right now it is a ripe time for anyone to try it out. And the advantage here with going into the creator economy is that you don't have to quit your day job. So till you hit your 50 videos and you see the revenue stream actually perking up and see that it is from the exact 1,000 fans that Chuck spoke of, you don't need to quit. My colleague actually just quit last year because he was invested in his wife's YouTube cooking channel for the last 3 years. And then at some point he figured out that, okay, now I can actually quit because this will make me more money than what I was doing at a corporate job, right? So you don't really need to, it's not a hedge in that sense also.
He chose Kadai over code.
What's kadai again?
Kadai chicken.
The
Did I pronounce it wrong? Wok.
Wok. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. We were speaking to.
Oh, kadhai.
Ha, that.
Kadhai.
Ha, that.
Oh my God. I was like, I thought you were saying something that was like.
Yeah,
This is
Balloon
shaming.
So here,
Balloon shaming happening.
No. So here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. 5 years ago, I would have been offended at Srikit, like laughing at my accent. Now I'm thinking that's a great content idea. Malayalam mispronunciations of right. That's amazing. All right, let's take a break right now as I mull over this empire and as Tony thinks about the crucial verbalist, the crossword solving consortium at 6 p.m. every day. See you guys in 3 minutes.
Eventually, you'll see the end of your childhood,
Get accustomed to womanhood.
enjoy the experience of sisterhood,
Might get to wifehood
or not, choose motherhood,
or not. You'll learn to define your personhood.
earn a livelihood,
Change the neighborhood.
and get rid of the falsehood that life post academia is easy.
So join me, Ritasha,
And me, Ayushi,
on a journey from station starting point.
to station, what now?
Next station, Pudin station, and hopefully Agla station, adulthood.
Fresh episodes out every Thursday.
Welcome back to Simplified, where we are talking about the creator economy.
And we are bending the space-time continuum because it's been 3 minutes for us, but only 30 seconds for you, we hope.
There's a movie based on this, no?
Yeah.
By that creator, Christopher Nolan.
That creator.
Are they creator? So this is a question I have. So this okay, when we say creator economy, who is the creator that we are talking about? Because people have been creating things ever since cavemen have been shipping things into the world. So the creator economy creator, does it necessitate the internet being a thing?
No, I think it's more like it should be a fan economy where your funding is actually coming from the end consumer rather than a producer or a studio in between.
That's or a client. That's a difference between, say, a Beeple who sold that NFT and, say, a commissioned artist.
Yeah. But in general, freelance allows you to do like things you like, but you still have to go through the pains of contracting and invoicing.
So that's very interesting. So it's like I am creating this art and I have people supporting me. Hence, I am a creator. Otherwise, I'm a graphic designer.
Yeah, I see actually parallels with like when you talk to your CA, he talks about like creatively finding ways of making your taxes work, like by saying everything is a business income, right?
Yeah,
that's pretty much how the creator system also works.
One characteristic of creators is oftentimes it's very difficult to pinpoint who exactly the creator of something is.
Yeah.
If there's a fine building, a monument, who built it? Who built the Taj Mahal? Was it Shah Jahan? Was it the laborer? Was it the guy who designed it, who planned it, who carted the marble from wherever it was carted? So those projects are difficult. But,
Naren, the blockchain will solve all of these problems. A decentralized ledger. I cannot believe I had the answer to that. I feel like I'm in Bangalore right now. Get that answer.
But
in Naren's point, art is truth, creator is an opinion.
Beautiful.
Fantastic. Superb. Yeah. No, I think
so. In our context, a creator economy requires that a creator be easily found. So if it's very collaborative, you need one name whom you can pinpoint as a creator for the creator economy.
And for that there is something called a DAO, which we will elaborate more on our episode on Web3. No, but I think that's exactly what Naren is talking about, right? Like this collaborative and all that. Didn't a bunch of people team up to buy the US Constitution's copy, for example, a Constitution DAO or something like that? I have a feeling that's kind of like what you're talking about.
And they didn't or something for some reason.
Yeah, it was a very silly reason. Yeah. But so here's the thing. We'll discuss that more in a future episode that we will do on Web3, I hope. But so while that was a ridiculous use case, I think there is merit in the concept. There's this lovely quote that somebody had put, one of those VCs or something. Every new technology starts off as a toy or a joke. And I think that's fascinating to think of it that way. So while a lot of people are criticizing NFTs right now, thinking, oh, people are just like paying millions of dollars for JPEGs or whatever, it's it would be useful to strip away the silliness of it and see whether the underlying technology could actually be used for something else in the future. But I think that we will discuss that eventually once we finally figure out what a blockchain is.
I think just another characteristic of the creator economy is that the payment happens post fact, right? You can't even there's no, some things that you create might just be completely wasted.
Wasted economically.
Yeah.
You mean?
If you're freelancing, for instance, at least you know beforehand that this is the contracted value
of whatever you're doing. Yeah.
But in this one, it's pretty much dependent on the audience.
So it's interesting because now what is important is not just the art itself or the output itself, but also who you stand as a person. Like you are not just supporting the art, but in many ways you might be supporting the person's ideology or something like that. We know, for example, a lot of say cartoonists or something like that, and we support not just the raw content by itself, but also a political stance that a cartoonist is taking, and we believe in that and all that. So, or whatever else a person might be standing for. So in some sense, what I'm saying is that personal brand in some sense is important too in this creator economy day and age.
Which is what, I mean, speaking to one of our former guests, Meghnad, and who was mentioning somewhere around how there are a lot of people who subscribe to not just News Laundry, but also like The Wire. For me personally, actually, subscribe to The Wire. I personally don't read The Wire as much. I read a couple of articles here and there, but I still subscribe to it because I'm like, I subscribe to the notion of a free.
The notion of The Wire, exactly, right? Exactly.
Which is where those kind of things are. And you, Chuck, actually, one of the things that you talked about where once you had the money, you want to buy the notional music, which you will actually...
Yeah. When Tony was saying something a while back, I just realized we are all just talking about art, which makes me feel sad for non-art professions. Like, could there ever be, for example, advertising planner who just makes PowerPoints for the sheer joy of it and is supported by people on his Patreon and all that? Are we then saying to some extent that this creator economy, the creator has to then be in, say, an art-like space or has an output that has something to do with, say, writing or drawing or music, entertainment, something like that, and it can't be for a profession? That's a weird question, no? Maybe we'll just leave that to ponder and we will ask Naren to interject with a quote of the creator economy from Yes Minister.
No, but it can be a product or a service also, right? So it can be a product in the sense that there can be a final art form, or it can be a service like, teaching, for instance, which can be...
fair enough. So fair enough. So even if it is so another way of rephrasing what I said is if the advertising planner is making PPTs for the joy of it, that acts as marketing for him for a PPT making course that he might actually be doing.
Exactly.
Interesting to think of it that way. Wow. It's
No, actually, people put things out there which give them joy, which are absolutely ridiculous, like this Blender example. So if the PPT guy were to come and just make PPTs on YouTube, I don't know, maybe he would get a following.
I'm pretty sure he would. So one of the other things that I wanted to mention is the role of platforms in this whole creator economy. And so right now, there is this wave of, especially with Web3 and all that coming in, it has to be decentralized. We must move away from these filthy big tech organizations that are taking a big cut of our money and all that. We'll get to the Web3 part of things later in that hypothetical episode that we do. But there are platforms even now, right? Like a lot of creators are moving to what are essentially platforms like a Substack or podcasters moving to Spotify or whatever the case may be. It's like there will always be a platform, at least in Web 2, where it is right now. Even for that matter, we talk so much about Patreon or Kickstarter or whatever it is. They take a cut as well. So there's always going to be a platform in some sense. I guess some are better than others. Like there's a platform called Bandcamp where I buy a lot of music from because a bigger cut of that goes to artists. Now that that platform will never be as big as a Spotify. But I guess that's fine. And I'm guessing artists would love being on that platform more and more. This is another essay by Legion, and she's written some fascinating things about the new age creator economy. And she has some tips for platforms in order to embrace the new creator economy a little more. And she makes some lovely, lovely points. One of the things that she wrote was, in essence, that platforms should accept that there are different kinds of content and they can't all be measured with the same kind of metrics. For example, a podcast is something that you probably listen to only once, right? No matter how much a fan of a particular podcast or podcaster you are likely to listen to it only once. Whereas a song is something that you're likely to listen to hundreds of times. So how do you quantify, how do you equate the two? How does that play a role in, say, promoting that content and all that? And another way, she's written 10 points, actually. It's quite a beautiful piece. I'll link it out in the notes. But another lovely point that I found was the element of randomness. If things become too algorithmic, then we are going to just keep watching or listening to or reading to the type of content that is similar to what we already like. One of the most famed algorithms in the world right now is by TikTok, the so-called FYP, For You page. And people have been trying to crack, okay, what makes this amazing TikTok algorithm work that makes superstars out of, unknown people and, all that. And they wrote a blog post a while back. I had to travel to a different country in order to read that blog post, obviously, since we are recording over here. But one of the things that they say is that there is a deliberate attempt at infusing randomness, which is not determined by the kind of content that you have seen on the platform before, or even how big the creator is right now. So I'll say maybe 90% of it is based on what you have seen before, consumed, your likes, etc. But there is a deliberate infusion of randomness, which will allow you to expand the kind of content that you see, and also possibly make superstars out of somebody who, had just started on TikTok 3-4 days back. I think that's lovely. I think we all need a little bit of randomness in our lives to expand in some sense. Those are 2 points from otherwise from a very long essay that she wrote. I'll link that out. But yeah, that's something I wanted to say. I don't know how to turn that into a discussion point. So somebody please.
Yeah, interesting podcast. You only listen once, YOLO. So but so another aspect that you briefly touched upon is that the person is a brand in themselves, right? Which has certain traps to it. One is that when you start out creating, obviously there are no metrics. You're going to be doing it for the joy of doing it. But eventually you start looking at the number of subscribers and looking at it as a stream of income. Allied to that is the fact that you probably need to have a different personality on screen to your off-screen version, and spend time and effort in maintaining that appearance, right? And try not to be cancelled. So I think in some senses the art and the artist sort of become tightly coupled after you've sort of become a creator.
I'm not so sure about that point of having a different off-screen persona, because a lot of people I've spoken to, for instance, have said that, and this might sound a little cliched and even cheesy, that authenticity is a big part of what they do, that their on-screen and off-screen persona are actually very similar. This is like who you see on screen is exactly who I am off screen. I think where the difference comes in, however, is that there is a lot of, even if the personality is the same, there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes, right? Even like for every 1 hour of video that is put out, there's a lot of hard work that happens off screen. There's a lot of, like for example, everyone sees a comedian on stage killing it in front of an audience of thousands, think, wow, what a dream life. He gets to come on stage and make jokes and that's his livelihood. Yeah, but that's probably the only one happy hour in his entire day. The rest of it is travel, rejection, this thing, that thing, all that. I mean, just think of the sheer amount of time that we four have put in researching and like putting this episode together for you, our dear listener.
This reminds me of, so whose quote was that? Sincerity, right? Once you can fake that, you got it made.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the point.
Chuck,
That's a mild counterpoint that I wanted to.
Our random generation algorithm is actually much stronger than TikTok's, because we've rehearsed all of these random interjections, even tremendous amounts of time.
By the way, for listeners, this is actually a take that we are doing. All these, this is not spontaneity. This is just practice. It's a fifth take.
What do you think? We all are reading out like a teleprompter script here. Like
we always read the script.
Yeah.
Ha ha! Exclaim loudly. Oh, sorry. Shit. There's a comment. Okay, but yeah, I think we've spoken about the creator economy.
This reminds me of a little slightly rude joke.
Huh. Is it rude like Van Nistelrooy?
I don't know. So if my audience finds it rude, I really sincerely apologize. But there is this.
You're now apologizing to the new listeners, because the other listeners are here saying send rudes.
Send rudes. Oh wow!
Perfect.
Tony, amazing.
So there is one little tropical country which wants to institute, which has found a lot of oil and it's very rich now, but it doesn't have a very good legal system. So it wants to have a legal system modeled on the best legal system in the world, which is England. So it sends its people, and they get all kinds of manuals and they study them, and they finally invite legal experts from England to see how their courts work. And the courts work exactly like they work in England. They have people with wigs, and they have the clerk of the court and everything. And every now and then, a tiny guy, like about 5 feet tall, he goes around among the audience and grabs the bosoms of all the women. He just grabs them and goes. So the British people find it very, bad. I mean, what is this? I mean, this is not done in England. Says, but of course it is. It says so here in your book. And the account of the court thing. And what it says is, a little titter runs across the court. So it's very rude, I know. I don't even know whether that should be there. Maybe not.
I think we have reached the organic end of this episode now.
Yeah. So anyway, for people who would like to see Naren become a creator and actually write a book, I think the only way to do this is exactly what we said on this episode. Let's get the pre-orders.
Yeah.
I think that's the only way to force Naren to.
I really got. So I read. I listened to an episode of a podcast, and that guy is talking about Gulzar, and Gulzar is like 80 years old, and Gulzar still writes 6 hours a day or something like that. It's just insane, and obviously it doesn't print that much. So like 95% of the stuff that Gulzar writes never gets printed, or it just goes either into the dustbin or his archives or whatever.
See, Naren, you got the part of the not writing and publishing down pat, right? Just a little bit more you need to do.
I think what happened last time, we got the hashtag wrong, and that's why Naren just made this joke. We actually put out Naren write a boob instead of this
okay.
time.
We have definitely reached the end point of this. So everyone knows what content to create. Naren, you need to write a book. Tony, that's 6 p.m. crossword thing sounds great. Shriketh, I know you have some plans of giving stock advice in a football chant format, which will be absolutely fantastic. And
that'll be awesome. Just cheering on stocks, dude.
Just cheering on stocks. That's amazing. Zomato ka plastic supporters. Fantastic. I love this idea.
BTM is going down, and Shriketh's like, how shit must you be?
Oh man,
amazing.
No, but this is just to take this. This is actually like there are so many memes, especially like about certain stocks like ITC, which is forever sideways.
Yeah.
Right? And like that truly is there are truly like types of stocks you can actually be.
Yeah, absolutely. So
if you can live stream gaming, you can obviously live stream the stock exchange. You don't even need to do anything. The tickers are moving on their own. Find creative
parking the BSE, we can call it. See, I made a Chelsea reference also. I'm assuming. I don't know these things. Anyway, so let's
you should do something in prog music, man.
No, enough. Yeah, I have done enough. Prog music also has enough. Naren, please sign up.
Prog music has had enough.
Yeah, Naren, you know what to do.
Yeah.
Stay creative. I think what you should do is, because we always give this advice of, if you're, maybe sign off this way, that Namit will definitely say this, is if you have an idea, just start. Don't wait for the perfect episode or whatever it is. Just start. So I would actually sign off, Naren, by saying not by stay, but start. So stay simplified, start something.
And also like there's no such thing as original art, right? Like you can just look at your favorite format and try to do it as well. Like get there iteratively.
See, we have given everyone so many ideas.
So much.
Yeah. So please write back. We consider ourselves what's that thing that starts all startups? That thing that everyone goes to once in a year. Y Combinator.
Y Combinator. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
I thought it was Daru.
Why not Combinator? Why not start something?
Either it was like a drinking session or something like that. Which starts up
might be the why.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what happens, right? Early 20s you make Goa plans. Late 20s you make startup ideas.
Naren, please.
So
put us out of our misery.
Stay safe, stay creative, and stay simplified.
And new listeners, we will see you back next week.
Old listeners also.
They are contractually obliged. See you guys. Bye.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. From Jeff Bezos to Amitabh Bachchan, everyone has tasted failure, but they don't give up. On Probation Se Promotion Tak, Abhinav talks about failure and how to use it as a stepping stone towards your goals. On a show about crypto, Rohan and Jaspreet Bindra, founder of the Tech Whisperer, debate whether blockchain could be considered socialist in nature. On The Longest Constitution, Priya Mirza sheds light on untouchability in the workplace with the help of Article 17. Witness the liberation of Bangladesh in the season finale of War and Warriors as narrated by Air Vice Marshal Arjun Subramaniam. And on Audiogan, Kedar is joined by writer Himali Kothari. They talk about Project 87. This project focuses on English language plays from India. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Go check out our YouTube channels. We go live on a whole bunch of different things. We have a number of different channels. You can find them on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week. Cred, Bank of Baroda, CoinSwitch Kuber, Intel, and Oxfam India. Thank you for making this possible.
पेश खिदमत है आपकी शान में हमारे अंजुमन से. Hi, I am Sadaf.
And I'm Arshit. खाने का इतिहास, economics, policy, psychology, सब है मेन्यू पे.
Only on the Nankari podcast every Wednesday. सिर्फ IVM podcast ऐप या वेबसाइट पर या फिर जहां से भी आप अपने पॉडकास्ट सुनते हो.